welcome to this week's how-to. I'm gonna be showing you how to do some basic highlights. Going to be continuing to work on this little fella, one of the Primaris that came with the 48 Conquest magazine. As you can see, he's already got quite a bit of light and dark here. What I'm going to do is just add some quick highlights and some shadows, just give him more of an effect of being lit from a specific area, and bring out some of the areas and details that I want. Now, we basically painted him in Macragge blue. Sorry, just going to move that out of the way. Washed him in blue tank and then dry brushed him in Macragge, and then dry brushed him back up with Macragge, and then used ultramarine blue to make him a little lighter. At this point, you often want to compare the colours, and you can see the Macragge blue isn't that different from the colour he is. The ultramarine blue is giving me a slight difference, so I'm going to use the ultramarine blue to highlight. For now, I may add some white to it. I may add some matte white to it in a moment. Just to bring up the colour. And remember, a lot of this comes down to what you, how bright you want it, how much obvious. Just going to bring that in. You want your brush to be at a reasonably pointy tip when doing this. Now, I'm going to do a basic form of highlighting called edge highlighting. Now, you can just drag it around on the point, but what I tend to do is I tend to take, it's going to be a bit tricky to show you this, I'm going to do my best, the flat of the brush, and just run it along the edge of the model. Where I want the highlight to be. You can see there already that's popping out. Now, I haven't done it here. To be honest, I have a bit because it's a bit awkward doing it behind the camera. But you can see already. Let's focus that baby in. You can see already that neck piece is already starting to pop out. If I do the same with this helmet vent, I guess, channeling. You can see that already it begins to pop out, and it begins to give the impression of the light coming from a specific direction. You can also see how I'm building on the dry brushing. Where the dry brushing has raised the light, that's the points I'm using to bring the light up to a crisp point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a tiny bit of white. That wasn't white, that's blue, so let's try again. I'm going to add a tiny bit of white to my blue. I'm going to quickly show you a little trick when mixing. What a lot of people do is when they mix a palette, they'll just dump the colour the colour they're mixing right on top of the base colour they're using. It's much more effective to put it a little bit away, and let's just move that out of the way so I can show you, and then take the colour and just mix it in between the two. That way you can drag the colour you want, you can drag them and mix them until you get the colour you want. If you dump it in the middle, you've got to get the proportions right first thing. With this, you can really fiddle with it and just match that colour up, which, if you're mixing colours, is a nice quick cheat. If you're painting armies, I'd recommend trying to get the colour as close as you want in a bottle already. For example, you might decide you want to use a very light blue to make it pop. You might buy this, or you might just use the ultramarine or something like that. Failing with that, many local bodies, if you can't find the colour you want to use highlighting, many local hobby shops, including my local, A Fistful of Dice, will supply empty bottles, and then you can pre-mix the colours however you want, using a syringe, using pipettes. Basically, there are loads of ways to get the colours you want. Now, I'm going to take a bit of this lighter blue, and again, I'm just going to very carefully lay it around the edge. Now with this, I'm not going to go all the way. What I'm going to look at is the points where the light might shine. You can see the light is actually shining in some places as well, so that's a little thick. If you're very careful, you can take it off with your fingers, you can take it off with a wet brush, but ideally at this stage you want to be as close as you can. And again, you can see I've added some light here and here, and if I place him down and just give a quick focus there, get in, you can see that it gives the impression of the light coming in from this direction. Some people you can just do the light coming down from the top and give it more of an omnidirectional look. In other cases, you want it coming down, you can do it in a specific direction. It's really up to you. There's no wrong way of doing stuff. It should just look right to you. If you're happy with the result, then you did it right. Now, I'm just going to do the opposite now on the kneecaps. A quick way of doing shade is to take a dark shade and add it underneath. Now, you can see already the kneecaps are darker, but I just want those kneecaps to pop a little bit more and look a little bit more three-dimensional. So I'm just going to run the shade there. And you notice I'm not pulling it up. I'm just running it in a bit of a semicircle underneath that kneecap. And again, with the other kneecap, I'm just going to do the same thing, running a bit of a semicircle underneath the kneecap. Light is not flat, it sifts and things. And again, if you're quick and you do it wrong, you can use your thumb to lighten it, but you can already begin to see that it's giving it more of a three-dimensional effect. Now, where this shin is quite underneath, I'm going to give it again a bit of a wash. And it's a bit too dark, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to feather it out there around the edges. If you find it gives you too strict a point, you can take a bit of water, which you can't see there, and just use that to either thin it down or feather it out on the edges there, so that it doesn't quite give you as heftier chunk there. And you see again, that leg is already looking like it's a lot more in shadow and darker. You can use non-oil or close to black wash. That will give you a far more, I don't want to say cartoonish, but more obvious effect. I'm just going to quickly show you that. I tend to prefer to work with the color palette I'm already using. But if I again go to this left knee pad, you can see that the shade there isn't really obvious. You can often find that you'll need to do a couple of layers to get it right. But if I do it with non-oil, you can see again it looks blue. I'm just going to wipe that down because it's going over. The shade's not obvious, but it's a little more obvious and it's a little more distinct with a non-oil than it was with the blue shade. I prefer smoother blends of colour, but it really is down to you. Now, one thing I'll point out, and you'll probably already noticed, is as the shades dry, they're less obvious than when they're wet. This is one of the reasons I prefer to use a blue, because then if I've mucked it up, it's not too obvious. And if I haven't done enough, I can always add more. Remember, with painting, you can always paint more. You can't unpaint very well what you've done. Which is why I tend towards the blue shade over... sorry. Which is why I tend towards the blue shade over the Nuln Oil or the dark tone or whatever wash you're using. And finally, I'm just going to do another quick form of highlighting, which is just to create a highlight where there isn't really one on the edge. Now, I want to give them a little gleam on that shoulder pad. So I'm going to start with a little bit of the ultramarine blue. Bit much there. I'm just going to create... Notice this one's quite thick. Again, if you're quick enough with your thumb, or sometimes I keep a bit of tissue on the side, you can rub it off. But in this case, I want it a slightly thicker line because, again, I'm going to gradient that highlight. I'm just going to take some of my blue and mix it back in with the least little white, some friendly trees. Sorry, random Bob Ross joke there. And what it is, I'm just going to narrow my brush point so it's a little thinner. And again, create a smaller point. And the final way, you can see it's all built up 3 bits. And you can, if you've made it a bit light, that was roughly what I intended there, because I wanted a little bit of a pinprick of light. But if you've made it a little light, there's no reason with these light colours that you can't just go over it again and smooth it out. There, and again you can see what I've done there. Has thinned that line up a little closer to what I actually wanted it to be a bit more. But again, what I've done there, you've got the light there and you've got a gleaming point there. With this, one thing I do also tend to do with the shoulder pads is I tend to take a bit of the wash. I'm just going to quickly show you there. Take a bit of water, bit of the wash, and water it down. And if I just run a line, I'm just trying to get it into the light for you. I think I've nudged my light there out of the way. Just bringing that line there. Now, normally I would, again, I've done that a bit thick, and I can take that off with my thumb. Normally, with the shoulder pads at least, because there's a big chunk of detail, I would do the edge of the shoulder pads first, because this wash here, well, A, because I'm blathering it everywhere at the moment, bit sloppy, usually I'm better, but I'm painting through a camera lens, can also help if you've spilt a little bit of your shoulder trim, or if you've gone a little over, the washing in the corner of the shoulder pads can help to hide some errors. But it can also help to bring up the difference between the bit here and the shoulder pad. You can see already it's giving it a more three-dimensional look. You've got that gleam there. Now, I haven't done much, but again, you can see on the neck there, on the gorget, and on the helm there, you can see where the light is. On the shoulder piece there, you can see where the light is. And I'm just going to do a tiny, tiny bit more on this, because I want to. And take it up just that tiny bit more, and then you can see there if I put it there, you can see that it gives the impression from quite a distance that the light is coming down from the top here. And that's important. What you really want is the impression of shadow and light from a distance, because you're going to be looking at these models from arm's length. Sorry, possibly up to as that up to that far and further. You want to see the details pop from across the room. If I bring it up and bring it right close, let's see if I can get that focused in there. The detail becomes more obvious. The difference between the colours becomes more obvious, and it is possible to really feather and smooth it out in a way that it blends. But unless you're painting Golden Demon standard, it's not worth it. You remember, this really wants to be about making your guys pop when they're on the table. And again, you can see how it gives the impression of the light coming from a certain point, and it does so here, but also all the way back here. You can still see the light here and the light here. If any of you aren't aware of it, there are terms such as competition standard and tabletop standard. This is very much what you'd consider tabletop standard, possibly low-end competition standard. Because, and it's not because of the quality. You can spend a lot more time making a lot better quality and still have it be tabletop standard. You can do it a lot more sloppily and still a lot more quickly, with a lot lower quality, and still really call it competition standard. It's because the intent is to see it from a distance. It's quicker, it's easier, and I'm not fussed that you can tell the difference in the color transitions up close, because I want to see it from a distance. You can spend hours painting a single model. You can spend days painting a single model. But realistically, if you're going to only ever be looking at that model at arm's length or further away because you're playing with it, you don't need to. You can if you want, but it's not a requirement. Okay, guys, I hope that helped. Next time you see this bunny, he should have loads of detailing on him. He may not, because I'm actually focusing on painting my quilting, guys, because I like quilting. But yeah, next time he should be more further done, and we'll be going on to something else with him and other tricks and tips that you can do to really get some mileage A models. Okay, thanks very much. Bye.